Hi, good evening everyone, and welcome to the Imprint WUSA officers debate. So, since I'm Abhiraj Damba, I'm the managing editor of Imprint, and I'll be one of the moderators today.
And my name is Alicia Wang, and I am the editorial assistant for Imprint, and I'll be the other moderator today. Thank you all for coming.
Since we only have one candidate each for president and VP, this is going to be more like an interview than a debate. We're going to be talking to our presidential candidate, RORY, first. So thank you so much for coming in today, RORY.
Thanks for having me.
So to begin with, could you introduce yourself to everyone? Tell us like a little bit about yourself, your name, program, as well as like a short opening statement.
Sure. So, my name is NORRIS. I'm in my first year of biotech CPE here at the University of Waterloo, and I'm running for WUSA president. Currently, I'm living in B1, but just a short introduction about myself. I'm really looking to this opportunity to be WUSA president, to improve WUSA. There's many things that I'd like to see change, and there's many things that I think WUSA is doing great right now.
Amazing, thank you.
Maybe ask what drew you towards running for WUSA president specifically?
So what drove me towards running for WUSA president specifically? The main thing was that nobody else was willing to step up and take the position. I think it's really sad that nobody would be willing to do that. So on behalf of WUSA, I decided that I was going to take up the mantle and run for president. Obviously, there's a lot of things that I would like to change with WUSA. Last year, they just went through the big change in governance. They went from their sort of events model to the WUSA model. I think that there are definitely things that have happened in the past year that have sort of declined since during that point, just due to the transition. I think this year is time that we really get back on that course and WUSA is able to provide for the students who make UW so great.
And what experience and skills do you bring to the table? How will you be able to best serve the student body?
Yep. So I have lots of experience working with student government. So when I was in high school, I was actually started as a grade 9 representative when I was in grade 9. And then when I went to grade 10, I became the treasurer of our entire school. And then lastly, grade 11 and 12, I ran and was elected president for 4 years. So I know a little bit about how student government works. Obviously, there's a big difference between what we did at a high school level versus what we did at this more university level. But I love the opportunity to still be able to represent students. I think that's always been one of my passions, was being that voice for the students who felt maybe that they weren't being heard. As for what experiences I bring to the table, so as some of you will know, I'm a first-year student, which I think this is the first time that a president has run who has been first year. I think that I bring a whole new view of things and a different type of experience that maybe the third and fourth years who've been running for president previously don't have.
Thank you. So you mentioned you have like an understanding of how student government works. Thank you. So with that in mind, can you explain in your own words how WUSA functions and how the organization advocates for students?
Yep. So WUSA, there's a list outline of the 10 core sort of principles that WUSA is meant to follow. I think the big three are representing students, running events, and then also some of the other activities they do, like the GRT, they advocate or barter on behalf of all the students in order to get a better price for things like the GRT. I think when it comes down to how I feel WUSA operates, right now WUSA operates where there's a board of directors, there's 11 of them, plus president and vice president. That board of directors will set the policies and ideas forward, and they will look at how WUSA is operating, and then it'll get passed down to the staff who work at WUSA to really run the organization and to sort of push us forward towards those policy goals that they want to achieve. And then that all gets reported back up to WUSA, the board of directors, and then they can change how they want things to go, or they can say, yep, that's exactly how we want things to go, and keep pushing forward. Does that answer your question?
Perfect, sounds great.
Thank you.
So what part of WUSA's long-range 2020 to 2025 plan do you hope to address during your presidency?
What part of the 5-year plan? Yep. So the 5-year plan, there are different things in there that I want to help change. One of the big things in the 5-year plan is obviously the new governance model that has come out. I think that, as I talked about earlier, the governance model is sort of shaking up WUSA a bit. I think we're not really getting as much communication between WUSA and the students as I'd like to see. So that's one of the big things that I want to push for, that it might not necessarily be in the 5-year plan, but I definitely want to see more communication between both sides. That way students actually know, what WUSA does and everything. Like, speaking on behalf of myself as a first year, I had no idea what WUSA even did until I started researching for this position. It's the kind of thing where WUSA's out there doing their own thing for the majority of the time, and then the students don't know what the WUSA is doing for them, and then the WUSA doesn't really know what to do for the students. It's sort of a nasty cycle that I don't want to see happening to WUSA. So I really want to push for that increase in communication between both sides.
Perfect. So with that in mind, what specific goals do you have for your time in office? So you can address any initiatives that WUSA has already undertaken, as well as any new initiatives you'd like to take if you're in that time.
So speaking of specific initiatives, I definitely want to push for new committees that are able to sort of oversee different aspects of student life that I've seen people struggle with right now. So one of the big things right now is that housing out there, there's not as much supply, and it's very expensive and very difficult for a lot of students to find housing. I think that as WUSA, we need to set up a new committee to take a look at the housing question and see, as WUSA, what they can do in order to help students find more housing. I think there was a poll recently done in the Waterloo area that found that 70% of students were having trouble finding housing for the next year. I think, as someone who's currently in first year and looking for housing for second year, it's been this whole thing where you're now looking for a place on top of everything you're already expected to do as a student. So studying, going to classes, and all this, but then on top of all that, you also have this third job where you have to spend a bunch of your time reaching out to places, getting quotes, communicating with them, going on tours, and doing all this in order to be able to find housing. I think that's one of the things I really want to push for, is a committee that can sort of look at it and see what we can do as WUSA in order to help improve student situation in that way. Okay.
That's great. So, so you've talked about pushing for more committees for things like these. So with that in mind, and like with the with the new WUSA government system still in the process of being actualized, and given that you also stated that you have a goal of increasing transparency, how do you plan to ensure that the board and committee discussions are transparent and that WUSA is held accountable to students?
Yeah, I think that's really easy. I think that students should be able to not only attend WUSA meetings, but I do not think that any part of WUSA meeting should be confidential. I'm not sure if you guys have seen the minutes recently, but there's two sections. There's the regular section, and then there's a confidential section, which is reported to students. I think one of the big changes that can be made is that students should be able to go to WUSA meetings so that they know directly what WUSA is doing and what policies they are taking part in. I think that also, the fact that we're sort of hiding this information from students, it affects the way that students think about WUSA. It's part of this organization that's sort of sequestered from actual students, and they don't actually know what they're doing. I think a well-informed student body not only means better things for them, but it also means better things for election and WUSA in general, like stakeholder meetings and stuff like that.
So you just described how student engagement has maybe not been the best for various reasons of WUSA. How else do you plan maybe to increase engagement with WUSA aside from increasing the transparency between WUSA and the students?
Yep, so besides increasing transparency and also sort of increasing that communication aspect, which I talked about earlier, I think there's only so much WUSA can really do to increase student motivation. I think that it's been hard since COVID to get people sort of engaged on WUSA. I know even before that, it was down since I know the previous years. I think it's one of those things that sort of has to be fostered slowly. Like, I can't come out tomorrow and just encourage all students to know everything about WUSA. But I think if we slowly, over time, increase the amount of people who know what WUSA is doing for them, over time we'll see that people who are willing to come out and be involved and work with WUSA. I think where we're really failing right now is communication with first years. Again, I can talk to that on how I've experienced things. Again, like I said earlier, I had no idea what WUSA did for me until I started researching a little bit more about running for a different position and then finally deciding to run for president. I think that really we need to look at next year at the orientation, getting all the first years and just giving them a quick 5 minutes. This is what WUSA does. This is how they help you. Show up for our meetings if you want to. You can be part of this. And I think it's in doing that more people would know what WUSA does, and then that will increase engagement between both sides.
Perfect. So now we move on to the student-run services. So as we all know, one of the things that WUSA does is it operates many student-run services on campus, including advocacy-based services like Raise Government Center, as well as other services like MAPES, etc. So how do you view the role of the student-run services in WUSA, and how do you plan on working with like WUSA's relationship with these services?
Yeah, so speaking of student-run services, I think that it's a little bit of contrast there because with student-run services, you want to give them enough space to be able to operate independently of WUSA, but also work closely enough with WUSA that people know that those services are out there and that people can actually go to them. As for what I do specifically about it, I think that right now, I don't know the exact numbers of student-run programs out there. I think it's something that maybe we should push more for. I don't know really, again, as a first year, I've never really heard much about the student-run services. So I think it's a lot more getting to make sure that people know that they're out there, and so that if students need that, they can go to the student-run services.
Okay, so actually to follow up on that, so certain services like Raise Government Center are based on advocacy, and in the past, coordinators and volunteers and directors at these services have addressed how their relationship with WUSA limits how they do their advocacy. There have been debates within WUSA about to what extent these services should be able to do advocacy given that they have the So how do you plan on, so what are your views on the role of advocacy within these services, and how do you plan on supporting them, or how do you plan on how much independence you plan on giving them?
I look at this sort of very similar to the different societies throughout campus. So we have like the society, or the science society, and society, and all these different things. So all of those are really operating separately from WUSA. But technically speaking, they're supposed to go through WUSA and concerns that they have. I think they should have essentially as much autonomy as all these societies. Like WUSA can give them their like budget and say this is how much you have for the year. But I think it should be completely up to them on how they want to run everything, where they want to spend the budget, and everything like that. And then I want all concerns to sort of come back to WUSA. So I think the university really doesn't want to deal with like 12 different student associations all advocating for different things. The idea was that everyone would sort of fall under WUSA, and that all the concerns would sort of come together through WUSA to the student government, that way or not the student, to the regular university, to ensure that there's only sort of one voice speaking up for all students, and not sort of all these 12 different separate like organizations all communicating with the university, all wanting different things. I think that there definitely needs to be, again, more communication there. I think at this point, like we've sort of failed as societies where like they're running independently, but sort of they have nobody to talk to if they do have concerns. So I think WUSA needs to like set up even a committee that where their concerns are directly talked about and where they can bring their own concerns. So I'd want to see it sort of running that way.
Okay, thank you.
So now on the topic of student services at the school, how would you plan to address the various mental health issues within the school? It could be students' own issues with mental health, or the issues with the mental health services present at the school.
So yeah, mental health is a big thing, especially nowadays, and especially after COVID. I think that WUSA needs to be doing more in order to reach out to these people who need help, with it. I think right now it's the kind of thing where like if you're looking for support, there are ways you can find it, but if you're not looking for it, it's hard to find. Like I think people need to know exactly where to go when they need these different resources and help on campus. I think, speaking specifically to mental health, it's hard right now, and I know a lot of people are struggling. I think it's been a difficult year. I definitely think WUSA should be doing more about it. I can't say specifically my policy decisions now because I haven't really responded to them, but I really love to get implemented.
And how would you ensure, so WUSA advocates for all students, and so with that in mind, how would you ensure that WUSA continues to advocate for marginalized groups on campus, beyond just what the services are doing?
So yeah, so I think it's that communication piece. I think the students of WUSA, I think the directors and the president and vice president, they're not supposed to be this role that represents the students. I think they should be the voice through which students are able to speak. I think it's definitely something that I want to look at is increasing transparency and communication. And I feel that if we would need to set up additional committees for things like that, that is something that I would.
So, and what are your thoughts about the availability of student spaces on campus, and what are your plans to? So, what are your thoughts about the available student spaces that are already there? Do you have any plans to expand on that, and if so, what are they?
So I can only really speak to sort of what places WUSA currently has control and access to. I look just behind me to like all the space that we have here that's just sitting empty doing nothing. It's the same thing with the old bomb shelter. Like it's all the space that WUSA has currently, and there's nothing being done with it. I think that's such a shame. I think that's something that definitely needs to be improved. I think that even putting, like if you wanted to run clubs or something out there, I think that would even be better than what's currently happening, where they're just sitting empty and people are walking around saying, WUSA's not doing anything at my school, how do I know? Because there's another giant sign sitting outside of an empty room.
Just to follow up on student spaces. What do you think about the work or discussion that is currently being done by WUSA with regards to those food services or expansion of food services as well as like the bomb?
So yeah, so I think the fact that it closed down was a shame. I think it's somewhere that people would be able to hang out even outside of class, and I think the bomber is something that definitely should be looked at reopening. I want to talk to I want to talk to Canidate on campus, see if they'd be willing to come in with us as like a partnership in reopening the bomber. I'm worried that if WUSA goes just ahead and opens it by itself, that the same sort of problems that they saw the first time was going to keep back up again. But yeah, it's again, like I said earlier, I really think it's a shame that we have all this space as WUSA and we're just sort of letting it sit there. Like, I really think that there are better ways that we can use all this space that we've been given by the university in order to run various events or clubs or stuff like that.
And can you elaborate on your answer in the recent AMA where you discussed or stated that as one of your goals, you want to better incorporate various student clubs and associations while making them more accountable to the students in the W? What exactly does making them more accountable entail to you?
So more accountable? So yeah, so that's sort of what I talked about earlier. I want to sort of put a community in charge of like making sure that certain clubs and organizations are running and respecting their constituents. I think one of the big things right now is like the art club. I have a lot of friends in the arts program who are finding that they're spending these dues on the arts club, but they're not really seeing their returns. And that's the thing, it's like the art club is currently running very independently of WUSA, but I think sort of giving sort of the members of or setting up a committee where different people can bring forward concerns like I don't think the art club is doing enough, then we can sort of appease these concerns, or we can talk about them and talk to who's in charge of running the art club and make sure that they're running enough events and services for the art students.
And regarding the other student services previously discussed, for example, mental health services, advocacy services, you admitted that as a first year you might have a bit of experience with them, but if you don't know such specifics, how do you plan to address them properly and effectively as president?
Yep, so I think that's a very simple question. I think the presidency is always about learning more. I'm always wanting to be communicating with students to learn what are their problems and to be able to effectively get to the answer. I think, again, in this time that I've decided to run for president, I've learned much more about WUSA than I have since I started here at Waterloo. I think it's that learning aspect of the president that is so important. I wouldn't want to sort of elect someone and then blindly continue to do their policies that they wanted to at the start of the year. I think adapting and changing what you want to do throughout the year based on certain feedback is very important as the president. So that's what we're doing right on there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. So, Rory, one thing, a common thread that I've noted in like a lot of your questions is that you have placed a lot of importance in communication with the student body, as well as being able to take the advantage of student body's like voice into account and being able to accurately represent that. With a 13-member board, like it's a small board, 11 of those members of the board are full-time students while they're working on board. How do you plan on ensuring that the student voices are heard? How do you plan on making sure that you're getting feedback from a wide range of students with different experiences, and how do you plan on incorporating all those experiences into your decision making?
Again, the thing is I would hope to be in constant communication with the students. What I would want to do in spaces is I would want to open up times where people can book and come in and directly talk to me, or other avenues where they can reach out to me directly. And I also want my directors to do the exact same things. I want them to be as open and reliable and able to change as much as I am, so that we will be able to come with all the concerns if people are comfortable talking to me specifically. As to whether or not, again, I sort of want to put the idea of accountability into the committee. Even maybe an independent committee of WUSA that's not directly run by the directors of the board, but that can say, we don't see this happening, or students can go directly to them and bring up their problems if they don't feel comfortable talking to the directors of WUSA.
Sounds good. I also wanted to go back to what you said earlier about housing being a concern among students.
Yes.
When it comes to housing, do you have any specifics in mind with how WUSA can address those, and what WUSA can do to address those, and if so, what are those specific plans?
I've heard from a variety of directors who are more passionate about this than I am. They have different policy goals that they want to achieve. So one of the big things that they talk about is a lot of students don't know what lease they're signing. So they'll go ahead and sign the lease that they're in, only to find out that there's a lot of clauses or things in there that really hurt them. So one of the things that they wanted to bring up was to essentially work as a student body to make sure that before students sign the lease, that there's someone they can send the lease to just even read it over once and just say, hey, this is a good lease, or there's stuff in here that I'd be concerned about. I think that's definitely a good policy that we can implement. That'd be very low effort and maintenance. There's other policies I've also heard people talk about. I believe one of the directors wanted to buy a building and send people up in there. I don't know if that's exactly something that I would push for, but I think it's definitely one of these things that students are concerned about, and they rightfully are. Like, I'm lucky that I live an hour and a half away from here. That if everything falls through, I could drive an hour and a half there and back every day if I needed to come to school. But I know a lot of students who don't even have that. So it's very something that if you don't get housing, like, what are you to do? So it's kind of this inelastic market that we need to face as WUSA in order to work together to meet it.
Thank you for that.
So do you have any sort of last comments to give us on the student body? Anything you want them to remember as they're heading to go.wusa.ca? Or just anything that you want them to keep in mind about your stances for WUSA?
So just keep in mind before you vote on election day, I know I might not be your first pick. It's the kind of thing that if nobody else is willing to step up, I'd be willing to take that on that responsibility. And I'm willing to essentially spend all my time working with WUSA in order to solve these problems that I've addressed in this interview. I think that there are still many things that need to be improved. I know WUSA is a great organization. They've been running great events even for the time that I've been here. But I think that there's many things that can be improved. And I think that I'm that change that needs to happen.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.